Excellency Minister Fatmir Besimi, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and privilege to welcome you today to the online conference on payments and market infrastructures, payments in the digital era, Inside Out, jointly organized by the National Bank of North Macedonia and the Netherlands Bank. Now it is my great pleasure to invite Governor Bezhoska to deliver the first speech to open the online conference. Governor, the floor is yours.
Do you hear me now well?
Yes, we do. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Aisha, for the introduction. Dear Governor Knott, dear Minister of Finance, dear speakers and participants. It's my great pleasure to welcome you at our traditional conference focused on payments in the digital era, Inside Out, which, as mentioned by Aisha, is jointly organized by our central bank together with the Dutch Central Bank, for which I must say I express my deep gratitude and appreciation to Governor Knott and his colleagues. Our lives are becoming increasingly digital as a result of the proliferation of new technologies that transform public and private services, making them more convenient and accessible to consumers. As our lives have gone digital, so have our payments. The digitalization of the consumer payment behavior, which has been going on for years, has been accelerated by the pandemics that shifted it in a higher gear. Globally, last year, cash payments declined by 16%, while the number of non-cash transactions increased by 6%. The pandemics particularly accelerated the move towards the real-time instant payments that grew by 40%. In the euro area, according to the ECB survey on the payment attitudes, 40% of the respondents stated that since the onset of the pandemic, they have used less cash and more cards, contactless in particular. The main reasons for changing the payment habits are increased convenience of the electronic payments, for example, increased limit on the amount of contactless payments, then also perceived risk of infection from banknotes, government's recommendations to use cash less, as well as more difficult access to and lower acceptance of cash at the points of sale. This trend in payments is unlikely to be reversed. Almost 90% of the respondents stated that they would continue to use cash less once the pandemic is over. Similar trends in the payment habits can be observed also in our country. Consumers have shown strong preferences for using cashless instruments, such as cards. For example, the number of payment transactions initiated on the virtual point of sale last year doubled and continued to rise at double-digit growth rates this year. Also, the volume of contactless cards payments increased by about 50% last year, and this trend has continued this year. Obviously, advancement in technology opens the doors to innovative digital services, but to unlock its true value for businesses and consumers, we as regulators have a role to play. In this context, clear example is the Payment Services Directive 2 that opened up EU payments market to higher competition by establishing a level playing field for traditional players and new entrants while providing higher protection for consumers. The new concept of open banking was conducive to richer payment landscape with numerous new entrants, so-called third-party providers, and numerous new customer-centric services. Thus, Payments enabled by new providers have just started to take off, but it looks promising to become a new normal as they are expected to improve the user experience. How fast this segment of the financial system in the EU is developing can be clearly witnessed by the approximately 300 new providers operating by mid-September this year, which is just 2 years since the application of the new regulation. Most of the companies that offer these innovative services are fintechs, but open banking also offers possibilities for traditional banks. In fact, the survey conducted by Accenture finds that 3/4 of the banks see payments modernization as being driven by changes in the national payments infrastructure and regulation, which include improving bank-to-bank payment systems, new industry standards, and open banking. The rapid move to digital payments has put additional pressure on banks, with 3/4 of banks' executives saying that the pandemic has increased the urgency of their plans to modernize payment systems. Pressures are felt by the central banks as well. In response to changes in the consumer payment preferences, the need to further increase efficiency of payments, as well as the disruption caused by COVID-19, the interest in central bank digital currency has also increased. In fact, last year was the launch of the first live digital currency in the Bahamas. A recent BIS survey of central banks found that 86% of the central banks were actively researching the potential for central bank digital currencies, 60% were experimenting with the technology, and 14% were already deploying pilot projects. The central bank digital money, intended to be digital equivalent to cash, could further increase consumer choice, competition, and accessibility with regard to digital payments, thus supporting financial inclusion and making cross-border payments faster and cheaper. In addition, some central banks state the preservation of the monetary sovereignty in case of widespread use of crypto assets as a motivation factor. However, central banks are also exploring possible side effects of digital currency. For example, the risk of financial disintermediation, as households and businesses can choose between holding accounts with commercial banks or with the central bank, or the increased run risk in case of distress, as there will be readily available safe assets, hence endangering the financial and monetary stability, or at least posing risks in these two segments. Therefore, it is crucial that digital currency meets public demand, contains possible risks, and ensures that payments landscape remains competitive. Then, how do we, as a central bank, embrace evolving challenges in the payments area? 2 years ago, we established an innovation hub aiming to facilitate, encourage, and support the financial innovation. We find this communication channel very useful for both the fintech and the national bank. We help new players to better understand the existing regulation, and in turn, they help us discover the potential regulatory gaps. Furthermore, last year, we conducted a survey to landscape the development of the fintech sector and to assess the opportunities and barriers for innovation. The results of the survey indicate that about 90% of all respondents are aware of the benefits that the digitalization of the financial services bring. About 70% invest in digital transformation, payment services in particular, while regulation and market size seem to be the two main obstacles for faster fintech development. Regulatory barriers mainly refer to the data protection, money laundering, and payment system area. The latter will be addressed with a new law on payment services and payment systems that transposes the European regulation in the payment area, including PSD2. The survey has served as a base point for the preparation of our first national fintech strategy to be adopted at the beginning of the next year. We expect that the new regulatory framework, and more broadly, the implementation of the strategy, will bring and make the new inside out for the Macedonian payment industry. Apparently, the digital age is propelling innovations in the financial area and changing profoundly the habits and preferences of consumers. I have no doubt that these innovation waves will continue to maximize benefits and contain risks that might come on the surface. Regulators, including the central banks, cannot stay aside. They have to be part of the innovation waves as they are to meet consumer needs in the payment landscape of tomorrow. I am very glad that this conference will shed light on these and many other relevant matters. So I eagerly look forward to the presentations and discussions of the speakers and participants. I wish all of you an enjoyable and rewarding virtual conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Bezhoska. Now I am delighted to invite Mr. Knot, the President of the Netherlands Bank and the Chairperson of the Financial Stability Board, to share his speech with us. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Isa, and good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here at this conference, a tradition jointly organized by the National Bank of North Macedonia and the Nederlandse Bank. And I'm glad to see that after a one-year hiatus, this 13th conference gets to take place again, even though only virtually. But before continuing, I would like to express my shock and sadness at the terrible bus accident that happened 2 weeks ago, 2 days before we were originally going to meet. I remember that when the news struck, my thoughts immediately went to my Macedonian friends that I have acquainted over the years, and I wish to transmit my deepest condolences to the people who have lost family members and beloved ones. Now, coming back to this conference, today and tomorrow, you will be discussing payments in the digital era with an inside-out perspective. And that perspective is truly the perspective of a modern central banker. A central banker who keeps his finger on the pulse of what happens in our society. A central banker who is aware of recent payment trends. A central banker who looks at what is happening nationally, but also globally. Trends regarding, for instance, the use of cash. In the Netherlands, the use of cash has declined steadily. 10 years ago, about 60% of all shopping was paid for in cash. Before the pandemic, that number had already dropped to 32%. Today, the number of retail cash payments has declined even further, to a little over 20%. Like in many countries across the world, also in the Netherlands and in North Macedonia, we see an ongoing digitalization of our societies and payment structures. This global trend has created a lot of opportunities for organizations and their customers. Unfortunately, it has also, among other things, contributed to an increase in cybercrime. Both financial institutions, like banks, and their customers are being targeted by criminals. A compelling example is the rise in ransomware attacks over the last couple of years. Another trend today is the development of cryptos. Cryptos are issued independently of commercial central banks, but there are increasing links between crypto assets and the mainstream financial system. A serious drawback is the fact that the value of most crypto assets is very volatile, and this makes them unsuitable as a means of payment, as a store of value, and as a unit of account. And the accessibility and the anonymity of cryptos make them vulnerable to illicit activities. Regarding stablecoins, there are specific concerns. Stablecoins are crypto assets whose value is tied, or is at least claimed to be tied, to an outside asset, such as a regular currency or gold. Stablecoins can bring innovations, especially for cross-border payments, like cheap remittances. But they also bring risks, in particular if they would be adopted as a generally accepted means of payment. Risks, for instance, regarding the safety, efficiency, and integrity of our payment systems. Or regarding cybersecurity and operational resilience. Or regarding data and consumer protection. And the final big trend I would like to mention is that today, financial institutions are increasingly using big data and artificial intelligence as part of their fintech solutions. Just think of a bank's chatbot. Using AI, this chatbot can tell customers what to do when they lose their bank card or help them with information about taking out a loan. In the field of fintech, North Macedonia has made commendable progress. Recent research on the feasibility of implementing fintech in North Macedonia, led by the National Bank, concluded that the country would be ready for a fintech-led transformation in the financial services sector. A lot, if not all, of these trends and technological innovations are here to stay. And as central bankers and supervisors, we welcome any technological innovation that has the potential to make payments more convenient and more accessible for everyone. The potential to contribute to our society's welfare. The potential to contribute to a trustworthy and stable financial system. But there is a big sine qua non. For us, as supervisors and central bankers, trust goes hand in hand with rules, with regulation and supervision. On the one hand, we need to give room to promising technological innovations. But on the other hand, we need to keep the risks in check. With too much leeway for risks, people might lose trust in the financial system. So if we look at what is going on today, how are we looking at tomorrow? For many of us, the digital era means a welcome step forward in payment options. Today, for instance, we use our smartphones for much more than just calling and texting. Mobile payment requests contactless payments, and smartphone and smartwatch payments have become the order of the day. But it would be wrong to assume that this goes for everyone in our society. Regarding the future use of cash, at least for the foreseeable future, central banks should make sure that cash remains accessible, available and affordable for everyone. At the Nederlandse Bank, we even advise people to carry some cash. For instance, in case card networks are down. This could happen due to technical issues or maybe even a cyber attack. Regarding this latter threat, banks and other financial institutions are investing millions of euros to safeguard the security of online banking and other applications. They also work closely alongside the police and law enforcement. And there is also increased international cooperation in the financial sector. The declining use of cash also raises the question of the future of public money. And that is why the ECB, as well as other central banks, are currently investigating a central bank digital currency, a CBDC in short, as a new, additional way to make central bank money available to the public. Without, of course, the intention of crowding out private alternatives. Looking at crypto assets and stablecoins, I want to underline the cross-border nature of the crypto space. Several jurisdictions have started setting up regulation, and it is important that we discuss this at an international level to avoid regulatory arbitrage. Finally, regarding big data and AI, we must ensure that AI does not discriminate against certain group of consumers. That is, processes can always be verified and that personal data are well protected. For this reason, the Nederlandse Bank works with other supervisory authorities to develop guidelines that prevent discrimination and ensure the processes can always be verified. All the innovations I just discussed are not limited by traditional boundaries. To benefit from them, while also effectively curbing their risks, We need both a national and an international approach. All the more reason for conferences like this to exchange views and experiences. I am proud of the constructive and ongoing collaboration between our two central banks. And I want to thank Governor Bezhoska for inviting me to this year's edition. At the time of the first conference in 2008, I wasn't even president of the Nederlandse Bank yet. But I very well remember the 10th edition in 2017. I was in Ohrid then with colleagues of the ECB and delegates from the European Commission. And I have very fond memories of that trip. North Macedonia really has a lot of beauty to offer. Since its first edition, this conference has only further matured. It has grown both in audience and in breadth of topics. And this year's program is once again testimony to that. So I wish you all a very inspiring 2 days, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, President Knot. Distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite His Excellency Minister Besimi to give his speech. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Good morning, dear Governor Bezhoska and Angelovska, dear Governor Knot. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude to the National Bank of Republic of North Macedonia for the invitation to address on the 13th Annual Conference on Payments and Market Infrastructure, and to greet all of the distinguished guests, participants and speakers who I believe will contribute to this conference as another successful event. There is no doubt that in the past 2 years of pandemics happens to be a period when the issue of digitalization has become increasingly relevant, affecting both service providers and also the users. With a new global trend and new normality, when we have a drastically growing volume of digital payments and the use of increasingly advanced technology, payment systems are back in the focus, and their security, resilience, and efficiency becoming critical to financial stability and good functioning of the economy. Accepting digital payments has the potential to significantly reduce the costs, increase efficiency, and provide wider access to payment services. The development of new financial technologies, such as an instant payment, which is one of the topics of the conference, opens the door for new innovations. The so-called instant payments will allow the recipients to receive money only in a few seconds after it is paid by the payer. The new wave of digitalization has a positive impact on the economy as well. It increases the productivity and certainly increases the well-being of society by providing greater access to information, knowledge, and data. On the topics of the conference is the benefits, opportunities, and challenges of the fintech industry-led transformation. The fact is that financial technologies and innovations are giving a new look for the financial sector, creating new services, business models, new products and solutions. With the growth of new digital payment technologies developed by fintech companies, consumers and retailers will have a wide range of payment products. Fintech companies are the ones who need to introduce new innovative payment methods and easily accessible and at a lower cost. In that direction is also the new law on payment services and payment systems, which will enable liberalization of the payment services market and the entry of the non-banking institutions such as payment institutions, electronic money institutions. These new payment services service providers are primarily from the fintech sector and are expected to spur the digital transformation of the existing market participants. With the liberalization of the market, the competition will increase, which will stimulate the banks and other financial institutions to be more active in the application of technological innovations in the financial sector. We as the Ministry of Finance are constantly investing in building of our capacities in harmonizing our operations with the EU standards and legislation. Thus, the new law on the payment services and payment system implements the Payment System Directive, the Settlement Directive, and the Electronic Money Directive. The new payment regulation aims to encourage competition in the payment market, in which banks have traditionally participated the most, by opening the entrance for the new service providers, including fintech companies that are expected to be the drivers of innovative and digitalized payment services, and thus to strengthen the competition in the market, which will mean better payment services at lower cost for citizens. Issues related to cybersecurity go hand in hand with the digitalization process as another key topic of the conference. As also mentioned by Governor Knott, cybersecurity, big data, AI should at the same time protect the individual data, personal data, but also make sure that validation of a transaction is fully in place and effective. Hence, we also call that the regulators need to adopt and appreciate a legislative framework that supports the digitalization, innovation, and competition, but also take care of the security and protection. Dear participants, the topics that will be discussed these 2 days allows me to conclude that we will have a fruitful discussion and presentation of numerous expert views on many key issues related to the latest payment solution managed by fintech companies, open banking, instant payment development, etc. At the end, I once again express my gratitude and recognition for the whole team that coordinates the conference. The governor, the central bank team, staff and leadership, but also the Netherlands Central Bank. And I wish all the participants a fruitful event and successful work for these 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Once again, good morning, colleagues. We would like to take you